Marking 1 year since Moscow's invasion of Kyiv, the United Nations voted overwhelmingly to demand Russia immediately and unconditionally to withdraw its troops from Ukraine. Ukraine earned a strong backing in a non-binding vote where 141 member countries voiced support for the resolution. 7 opposed it, while 32, including India and China, abstained. The vote was slightly below the highest vote for the 5 previous resolutions approved by the United Nations since Russia sent troops across the border into Ukraine on the 24th of February 2022. The resolution reaffirmed support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, rejecting any Russian claims to the parts of the country that it occupies. It also calls for war crime perpetrators to face international prosecution. Though UN resolutions are not legally binding, unlike Security Council resolutions, they serve as a barometer of world opinion.
Today's vote was really historic. You saw 1 year after Russia's illegal, unprovoked, full-scale invasion into Ukraine, where the countries of the world stand. We showed where we stand with Ukraine. The vote was clear. 141 countries voted to uplift and uphold the UN Charter. Only 7 countries voted against it.
After the UN vote, French Foreign Minister Catherine Colonna said that the resolution bears witness to the strength of solidarity with Ukraine and that Russia is more isolated than ever.
Ce vote adresse à la Russie un signal clair. Son agression doit cesser et avec elle son cortège de morts, de destruction, d'exactions et ses conséquences négatives partout dans le monde.
But Russia dismissed the resolution, with its UN representative calling Ukraine neo-Nazi and accusing the West of sacrificing the country and developing world in their desire to beat Russia. Meanwhile, on the 1-year anniversary, US President Joe Biden will virtually meet G7 leaders and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. The White House said that the United States will announce sweeping new economic sanctions against Russia, those aiding its war effort and more support for Ukraine. Among specific targets of the sanctions will be banks and entities that help Moscow evade the waves of sanctions already imposed in the wake of its 24th of February 2022 invasion. The war in Ukraine dragged into its second year on Friday, with no end in sight to a conflict launched by Russia. The war has killed tens of thousands on both sides and has reduced entire cities to ruins. And its impact has been felt worldwide in higher food and fuel costs and rising inflation. Now, for more on the UN vote and the overwhelming support to Kyiv, our correspondent Susan Tehrani questioned Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba. Listen in.
While it seems that the core Western coalition really does seem inact, are you concerned moving forward that more support from other countries may be waning and other countries might be saying that this is the West's war and this is Ukraine's war solely?
I think this vote testifies to the opposite. 141 vote. This is much more than the West represents. Also, this vote defies the argument that Global South does not stand on Ukraine's side, because many countries representing Latin America, Africa, Asia voted in favor today. Some didn't, but there are very few of them, and this number is uncomparable to the number of votes cast in favor of the resolution. So today's vote is just another evidence, as I said, that it's not only the West who supports Ukraine. The support is much broader, and it will only continue to be consolidated and to be solidified. Thank you.
Now, for more on this, we're being joined by Alan Bursten from California, United States. Thank you so much for joining us. Alan is a professor at the Department of Political Science, University of California. Of course, first question, it's been a year since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. What do you reckon lies ahead in this war?
Thank you for having me. Unfortunately, we're not really seeing an end in sight. When Russia launched its war a year ago, it appeared at least it seems like it appeared to the Russian leadership, this would be a very quick war, very decisive war. They would be able to sell the victory within a few weeks. And right now, we're sort of seeing sunken costs. The Russian leadership needs to prove itself and prove that all the losses and all the casualties and all the money and all the sanctions were all justified, and it can't afford politically to stop the war. So what we're seeing is continuous increase. We're seeing continuous devotion to sort of driving the war further and further. And Ukraine is aware of this. And as we've seen, Ukraine has done a very good job at stopping Russia at various different intervals. But unfortunately, we're not seeing any sort of indication that Russia is prepared to slow down its effects, slow down its attempts, or come to the negotiating table.
Right, absolutely. In fact, I will just come to that in a minute. How soon do you think NATO will reach a consensus for the long-range missiles and jets demanded by Ukraine?
Well, NATO in general is having a hard time agreeing on this. What we've seen is individual countries within NATO that really have stepped up instead of NATO as a whole body. Already in the days before the invasion, Poland and the Baltic countries sent anti-tank weapons and anti-aircraft weapons to Ukraine. And we have seen now the Netherlands in the last couple of days have indicated that their willingness to send F-16 jets to aid Ukraine in the war. So we're really seeing individual states that are much more willing to sort of come forth and help Ukraine in its struggle, as opposed to NATO as an entire body. I will also just add that even though NATO, again, as one institution, has not sort of thrown its weight into the war, individual countries, the United States has, in just military aid, given over $44 billion, the UK close to $5 billion, Germany, Poland. So countries have really tried individually each to give what they can while trying not to antagonize Russia and get embroiled in the war themselves. NATO as a body is still busy deciding. I'm not sure that they're going to come to a resolution anytime soon, to be honest.
All right, now coming back to a point that you'd made earlier, United Nations votes overwhelmingly to demand that Russia should withdraw from Ukraine. Now, of course, you know it's a non-binding resolution, but do you think the two sides will be able to get on the negotiating table anytime and reach lasting peace?
When you look at two countries in general, trying to see when do countries come to negotiate, it's really when it makes sense for them internally, politically, for the leaders to try to negotiate. Right now, unfortunately, neither side has an actual interest in coming to the table. Russia cannot afford internally, from how it will look politically, to say, actually, we have committed hundreds of thousands of troops to this theoretical made-up denazification of Ukraine, but now we can actually negotiate, we can live with Ukraine on our side. That would be almost political suicide on Russia's side. In turn, the Ukrainian leadership has really, much to a lot of people's surprise, managed to galvanize the people, managed to galvanize the West, as we see with these UN votes and resolutions, and they also have very little interest to come and say, you know what, we're willing to accept that Russia may have some territorial claim, some negotiation. The sort of winds of momentum so far have been on Ukraine's side, so I don't see any side really having an interest in the present time to come to negotiation. Each side thinks that they might be able to achieve more gains and actually force the other side into either acquiescing or certainly not surrender, but maybe some sort of favorable position. So right now, I think we're seeing probably an escalation towards another offensive in the spring. And for after that, we'll see maybe both sides will be able to come together.
All right. Mr. Bursten, thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast with your insights on this.
Thank you very much.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.